brings home this issue of this racial profiling, which this panel is going to address tonight. So let me start off by doing what I must do, which is introduce the panel to you. Next up we have Sharaud Moore. Sharaud Moore is a proud member of Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity. He was initiated in 1999 and currently a member of Iota Zeta Lambda chapter of Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity. He's also a member of the Free and Accepted Masons, Douglas, number 33. I don't want to get in trouble with the Masons. He's an international speaker and educator. He teaches algebra and physics. He's a published author, a screenwriter. He's a father of one, a poet, a national champion track coach at Long Beach Poly. Now, he wanted to make sure that one got in there. Jackrabbits. And an actor. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for Sharaud Moore.
Good evening. I have several stories for racial profiling, but I'll only share two because these were the most instrumental in my stance in dealing with law enforcement, or anybody for that matter, with intimidation. I went to Golden West, which is an Orange County school, and my friends and I, right next to us, it's a little closer than he was, about 1.2 hours or whatever. Me and my buddies, we hang out in the mall every day. We would go to the mall just to get kicked out because we were black, there was 5 of us, and we were considered a gang, that's what they told us. So one day we go to the mall, buy some football gloves or whatever the case may be, and we go to football practice. In the middle of drills, the police come to our practice, cuff us in front of our teammates, sit us down, cuff us. We stole our gloves and some socks and some wristbands, they said. We had receipts for it. They made us go back to our locker in handcuffs through Golden West's campus as they escorted us. Wow. If you know how Orange County is, Golden West is in the heart of Huntington Beach, Surf City, USA. We were the only black people in the 16-mile radius that were walking around in handcuffs in our youth. That was the first one. The second one, I really talk to my young black men about their appearance and the way that they carry themselves. But sometimes you're just going to come across a jerk. You're going to come across a bad person, someone who's looking to get even with those people, put us in our place. That's a very big issue I've dealt with officers, putting us in our place. Well, I'm coming from a track meet, Mount Sac relays. This would have been 3 years ago because my girls were sophomores that I was coaching. So myself, 3 of my hurdlers, 3 girl hurdlers, and 2 boys, so 5 of us total, 6 of us. I'm driving, I'm in my BMW, I'm pushing up to 60, driving speed limit on cruise control, because I'll ride right by the police with cruise control at 65. Won't pass him, but I'm not going to get behind him either. He pulls us over. I'm in my coaching shirt, Long Beach Poly. They're in their uniforms, Long Beach Poly. He sits us out the car, he pulls all the men out the car, cuffs the men, sits us on the sidewalk. What are you pulling me over for? He told me he'll ask the questions. I'll ask the questions here. I said, well, sir, I'm pretty sure you have to explain why you're pulling me over. I'm not an idiot. I've been through this a couple of times before. I'm not new to this, my friend. So I said, is this a criminal investigation? Was there something wrong with my car? Why are you pulling me over? I'll ask the questions. I would say about 15 minutes into the stop, there are 7 to 8 police cars on the freeway for me and my 3 15-year-old girls and my 2 16-year-old boys on the side of the freeway. And they let us go. They went through, checked my registration all through my trunk, lock, venue, you can't open a lock. All of that stuff, it doesn't apply when there's nobody around to witness it. So getting back in the car, I explained to my kids that, life is messed up. You're going to experience things like this. But just because you experience it doesn't mean it's the norm, and don't allow it to happen to you as you get older.
Because all of you have had an opportunity to experience racial profiling in it's almost impossible to become an adult black male without having that experience. So my first question is, what was the most significant impact of that encounter? And do you believe anything positive can be taken from it? And I can start at the far end, I can start at the close end. Is there anybody who would like to start with that? Is there anything positive that can be taken from it?
Well, in the case of being pulled over with my students, I use it as a teachable moment. I let them see ignorance at its finest, and I let them know that if I wasn't educated, if I wasn't aware of the laws and things that were going on, then they could have done anything they wanted to do. But my education, my understanding of the laws brought me through that situation. So then, if they ever come in contact with something like that on their own, which I'm sure they will, because they're a lot bigger than I am, they're a lot stronger than I am, and a couple of them are a lot darker than I am, you have to be prepared. You know, you have to prepare for stuff like that. And I believe the problem is, we experience this as a culture as a whole. We kind of, to protect our young men, we kind of baby them. And we teach them to shy away from certain things because we don't want them to be killed. Because we know if they go out into society, the cops will kill them. It's not a maybe, it's possible. If you raise up against an officer of the law, and we've seen it in the news, if you raise up against a neighborhood watchman, and we've seen it in the news, that could be your last day. So like I said, I use it as a teachable moment. Guys, this is what can happen. This is what would have happened if I would have not been prepared, if I would have not known the law, if I would not have been educated. Also, if I would have been dirty, if I would have had drugs on me, if I would have had guns on me, illegal guns on me, if I would have been doing something that I wasn't supposed to do, now they have the right to come in and degrade me in a manner in which they attempted to, but it wasn't successful because I was prepared for it.
And I want to piggyback on the point you just made and ask Mr. Smith a question, because you made a point earlier and you said something that I think most parents have to really take the time to share with their children, and this panel can speak to it. But my question is, based on a comment you made, is mid-police contact ever a good time to argue?
Initially, no. Right now, from the moment you've been contacted, or anybody been contacted, they teach this in academies, you teach it you learn it from your training officer. This is the most critical time. Because once you're contacted, you don't know what is going on. And your mindset is, this could have been the guy who who was a serial killer. Now, I'm just giving you the thought process of that cop from the time he makes that contact. And this could be his buddy that got shot. He doesn't want to be that guy. So it's almost, I agree with somebody said, it is fearful. So initially, no. You can kind of, it'll wind down a little bit as they investigate it. And just kind of wait it out a little bit, and then they can kind of see it's kind of winding down a little bit. Just excuse me, officers, and I've let you do whatever you needed to do. Could you just give me some information about what's going on? So midstream, no, let them secure the scene right now, because we are taught from day one in the academy, when you make that contact, that could be your last day. And they really bring that home. So it's really serious. I had a neighbor one time, sorry to get off topic, she called the police on my son's party. And the sheriff showed up, and I could tell when I contacted the deputy sheriff, he was in kick butt mode, and I could tell. So I went out and told my neighbor, look, you don't call the cops over something petty like that, because they're about ready to break into our door, and I'm a deputy sheriff. You don't do that, come over and talk to us. I kind of have to give our schooler a little bit on the seriousness of calling the police. But anyway, it's very serious, so you just want to let it cool down and it'll die out.
how has it impacted you in terms of what do you do differently now? I know for me personally, it serves me well as an attorney. I'm comfortable as a public speaker. I have a good command of the King's English. So now keep in mind, as a gigantic black man, I'm not just a black man. I'm a big, ginormous, grizzly bear-sized black man. So when the police pull me over, there's always extra units out the gate, okay? Because it's meat on the bone in the car, right? But, and there have been times when I've been pulled over, and let's just say, maybe I could have been good for something. The point I'm making is, because I have a good command of the King's English, and I'm quick to go, yes sir, no sir, yes officer, thank you. Almost every time, you may go on your way. So I think that kind of piggybacks on what Brother Remaker was saying in terms of part of looking the part is sounding the part. I do think we definitely have to tell our kids, keep it together. You do have to keep those emotions in tow. And especially in the face of, as you said in your teaching moment, Mr. Moore, this is a totally wrong moment happening without any justification. But as the deputy said at the end, that's not the time to try to address that. You're not going to seek your remedy in the moment. All you'll do is exacerbate the problem and maybe increase the level of victimization. So what do you do, if anything, different based on these experiences?
As I was trying to get you earlier, only because of time, I didn't spend enough time on it, but I think because I recognize just what's at stake in terms of what you see when you see me in that situation or in that moment. And I have to be different about it. Like you said, my mannerisms, what I say, how I say it, the tone that I use. I mean, it's like this dualism. You have to deal with it. You know, it's unfortunate because you realize that, man, you know, I'm basically having to submit myself in this moment, but realizing that, you know, in my mind, intellectually, there's another moment beyond this that I have to get to. And so in doing that, you sort of in that moment say, okay, I'm gonna ease this situation up for now, but there's a different point in time that I'm gonna come back to this situation and then deal with it in a way that's appropriate and, you know, keeps me alive, essentially. I mean, that to me is how I deal with those kinds of situations. And when you talk about, you know, grocery stores and restaurants and other places where you profile, it's the same thing. You know, you have to sort of recognize the moment for what it is and then deal with it on the other side of that moment. But in that moment, you know, be calm, be cool, be collected about it, and realize the situation that you're in.
That was an excellent point. But swallowing pride is a little tough for us sometimes.
Absolutely, I agree. We remain calm. One of the things I explain to my kids, and I used it, as somebody said, as an education tool. So, and when I say my kids, my nieces, my nephews, my kids, I share my experiences with them, you know, having them to learn what I had experienced when I was growing up, so they would know what not to do, how to act. You know, when you get pulled over, you know, you don't get the attitude, why the heck you pulling me over? You don't cap the attitude, you remain calm, you know, because if you tend to get an attitude, the cop already got an attitude. So if you got an attitude, that just makes it even worse. So, you know, I imparted a little bit of my wisdom on my children so they know what not to do, so they would get into some of the same situations that happened to me. So I think they turned out pretty well.
Brother Isa.
What I found, and it's pretty difficult to do, trying to appear less threatening to people. You know,
you want to get smaller? Make yourself smaller? Less dark.
Well, I think it starts with communication first. Even with my career in my field, I deal with. I work in Beverly Hills, and I have to administer radioactive traces to patients by injection. So they imagine being a little white lady seeing me walk up having to stick you. I mean, wait a minute, I need somebody else, you know, and I happen to be the best at being a puncher at my facility. I remember even having a situation where the CT tech needed help starting an IV, so I go in, so little Mexican man, he sees me, oh, no, I've been stuck twice, that's the rule. There's no rules. You know, it was a rule when I came up, so, you know, I looked at his arm and I was like, well, you know, I guarantee I'll get that. And I just looked this way. He says, I don't care how you look, but here. You know, it's how you communicate most of the time. When the police pull you over, I remember the last time I was pulled over, it was my fault. I think I changed lanes in the middle of the intersection, and so I was pulled over. They wanted me to roll down my back windows because the windows was tinted. I guess they're looking for somebody back there. You know, they wanted to know what I did, and I just answered the questions: yes, officer, no officer, and said the way I communicated, they just let me go. They didn't give me a ticket or anything. So, like I said earlier, it's important to de-escalate, especially with communicating. So we have to teach our kids how to communicate properly, effectively, to de-escalate situations.
All right, so looks like we got another point. Seems like non-confrontation. You can take it from one end to the other. I'll start here. You can move the microphone on down. How, if possible, do you believe change can come to pass? Is racial profiling here to stay, or can something be done about it?
Yeah.
And you got it first. So
Right.
In the deep end.
No, I can swim, so that's cool.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's a challenge because, you know, we export a lot of our images throughout the world through our music. You know, our culture sometimes, unfortunately, gets hijacked in some kind of way and then exported. So people see that, and that's what we represent to the world, unfortunately. So there's going to always be that struggle in my mind against, you know, what people perceive us to be, even ourselves. We perceive ourselves differently, you know. I go places sometimes, and usually in my line of work, I'm probably the only black male at least, and you know, some of the, say, white men who think they're culturally sensitive to black people come to me, what up? You know, like, huh? I mean, you know, I understand what you're trying to do, but hello, how are you? You know, and it's in a professional environment, but they want to come at me like that as if that's the only way I talk, you know. And so I have to understand that and deal with that, and it's a challenge. But is it here to stay? I think, unfortunately, for the foreseeable future anyway, yeah. I mean, I think that because of the way that our culture is hijacked and exported throughout the world, it's unfortunate. That's the perception of us. So we have to constantly be vigilant about how we deal with ourselves and our community and how we see ourselves and constantly fight that. And so getting back to your point about what we can do, you know, I do a lot of work with young people around social capital. So you mentioned something, Ethan, about, you know, our parents are in positions, our kids, well, we are in positions for our kids to be connected to attorneys and law enforcement and other types of officials that can help us navigate these kinds of issues. And it's called, you know, social capital, the networks, the institutions, the relationships, the resources that we have. And we need to expose our children to that. Take advantage of opportunities like this when sororities and or fraternities put on events like this. Expose our children in these kinds of situations. Have them meet the people that are present here, understand their line of work and how that can connect to them in some kind of way. These are the kinds of things that take time. These are the kinds of things that over time will eventually address some of these issues that we have to constantly, you know, be mindful of in our daily work with, you know, with the way racism sort of interferes with our daily lives. And so it's just one of those things that over time we'll have to sort of get to a place, but for now we're not there. So
this is a tough question. From my experience, I don't think change is possible, period. I believe the psyche has already been trained for people to feel a certain way about us. I do not think change is possible. even taking the connotation of the word black, it's always had a negative connotation. It's something that's dark, it's something that's evil. Looking at licorice, it's something that doesn't taste good, it doesn't leave a good taste in your mouth. I mean, just from a historical perspective, the word black brings a problem. And since it has this negative connotation, as a result, we see the negative impacts that it has directly on us. So I don't think change is possible. Trayvon Martin, prime example of racial profiling. And they continue to make a mockery of our race and not provide any justice. And it's hard for us to deal with it because we lack resolve. We don't know exactly how to go about changing the system, how to go about changing people's feelings towards us. And we're stuck to deal with it to the point that we tend to lack hope. You know, like when I get pulled over by a cop, what can I possibly do? Nothing. Like, it's nothing that I can possibly do. And I think just as far as like knowing your rights is like first and foremost something that can help us, enable us to actually have some type of progress moving forward. But change is not possible as long as racism is still evident.
Change is actually possible. However, the problem is change itself. You know, everything changes. When I say change itself, just like the law enforcement profession, when you change and you stop, and I'm going to use the word racial profiling, when you stop pulling people over, suspicious-looking people, for whatever the issues are, then your crime rate will tend to go up. You know, you tend to get more assaults, more burglaries, more this, more that, you know, than if you didn't. So change is possible, but the problem is going to be the change. The question would be, how do you really affect the change? So yeah, change is possible. It's just now we just have to work out the bugs.
I'm telling Barack on both of y'all. You think hope is possible too? The way that our society is structured, we're one of the very few societies in the history of the world whose slavery system was based on the way a person looked. So as long as there is a visible difference, there will be a divide, there will be racism, there will be profiling, because there is a visible difference. We cannot assimilate, we cannot blend in. It's just not going to happen. I don't care how late you get, brother. We gonna know. This is how it is. However, if we want to make our situations better, I believe two things we need to do. One, as they did in the civil rights movement, we need to start implementing pockets. Okay, if we stop supporting systems that keep us down, systems that support organizations that keep us down, like the different companies that provided Zimmerman defense money. We're going to stop giving you money. We're going to stop supporting you. Because if you have no capital, you can't function. Also, I think politically we need to show a bigger presence. And in our local politics, not just on the global scale. Everybody was happy to vote for Barack, but what about the mayor of Compton and the mayor of Long Beach and the issues that we have locally? Because the situations are all of the problems we have are local. They start locally and then they develop on a grander scale. So, one, we need to get involved in local politics and ensure that there are harsher penalties for people, especially officers of the law. That you can't abuse, the abuse of the color of authority. You should have harsher penalties for those people. And they should know that. And it should be publicly known. If you do this in this area, in this district, in this state, in this city, this is how you will be punished. Chances are you're going to have less incidents. And that's it for that. People listening.
I think that change is possible, but I don't think we can change until we change the way that we look at each other and ourselves. We profile ourselves. You see a bunch of black folks together, you're going to, black men, young black men, you're going to be intimidated. At least I know older women I remember a situation, my mother's car broke down, a friend of mine came to help me. I had to step away, had one friend watching my mom. My mom was worried about the guy who was looking out for her, you know? So we need to stop profiling each other. We need, before anyone else can respect us, we have to respect ourselves. They say we will have $1 trillion worth of buying power. Do you know how powerful that is? $1 trillion? So we have to stop, we actually have to start putting that money into our own communities instead of sending it out to take pride in our communities. We have to definitely start doing that. So we can do it, but we have to unify around that. We have to unify our money. And only then, because that's how everyone else is respected. That's the only way. So we have work to do. Hopefully we can do it.
I jotted a few notes down, so I might be all over the place, so just try to stick with me while I try to answer this question. I think the biggest thing for us is being accountable. I don't think that statistically we're not accountable for our own people. We're quick to point the finger at, you know, the cop or this or that, and we're not necessarily saying, okay, well, you are walking around smoking weed, you are sagging, you do hang with people that potentially have criminal records. So at some point, I feel like that, you know, some of that falls on us as parents and people of the community. Do I think change is possible? I do. I mean, prior to 1920, they said women couldn't vote. Prior to 1997, they said IOLAs wouldn't be in the MPHC. Prior to 2009, they said we wouldn't have an African-American commander-in-chief. But I guess one of the biggest things for me is I was listening to a brother by the name of Dr. Umar Johnson on YouTube one time. And one of the biggest things he said was that we need to start putting our people in positions of power. We need to encourage our kids to be doctors, to be lawyers, to be neurosurgeons, to be accountants, and not just, you know, basketball players, football players, and baseball players. I think that if we were able to do that, kind of catapult our kids to the forefront, I think it'll definitely start to erase a little bit of the racism and the racial profile.
Yeah, I think there is hope for change. And I'll tell some of you moms, you know, if your kid gets stopped, and I'll tell the moms, because the dads, we're going to want to fight. So I'm going to tell the moms, you know, whenever your kid, if somebody's stopped, they have to indicate in a computer system why they stopped that person, what was the reason, and what's the race of that person. Because they're trying to do the best they can with the database, but so they have to document it. So if you feel you've been racially profiled, it all should match up. Like if they say they had a call go out, it should match up with the call in the system. If they say that they stopped this person for this, it should match up in the computer system. And if there's some type of injury or any hands-on stuff, I would say you can change by contact the civil rights attorney and let them do the rest. My other thing is I try to recruit, not to say that African Americans can't do it either. I've seen a lot of blacks pull over blacks and other races for no reason. But I try to recruit young black men to do this job. Because who's going to better take care of the black community and the black people? So you get this thing, this image, I don't want to be a snitch, I don't want to be a rat. What about serving your community? What about when you see a young black man, you treat him with respect? I mean, if he breaks the law, he got to go to jail. But what about joining in? And my last thing is the candidates that they're hiring to be peace officers. You can't get a guy from Huntington Beach come into Compton. He knows nothing about that. He sees a young kid who's maybe 18, 19, a little drunk. He sees him immediately as a threat. He don't seem like my 20-year-old like I would when I see him. One thing they should really make them do is make people go through more, they call sensitivity training. Make them have said that, you know, hey, I've done this or I know some people. I mean, you just can't go. Because back when I first came on, They were coming to Compton and Century, and our Century station, like it was Vietnam. But would they do that in their own neighborhoods? No, because that's a good kid. He made a mistake. But they don't see that. So hiring the better candidates. Some states have gone to where they have a 2-year degree. Some agencies a bachelor's degree, and there are some studies that indicate that the more educated you are, not saying you can't be racist, because you can't, we know that, as doctors, we know that. But the candidates we're hiring, and we also have to join in if we want to get change.
And you let them know, I am not. And I took my daughter, I held my daughter, and we looked them in the face. And I said, we will not spend our money here because you didn't respect us. Because if you thought we didn't have, you were wrong. And we walked out the door, and I told my daughter. And you need to tell your sons and your daughters as well, and your relatives. You don't give people your money who don't give you their respect. And that's what we need to do in our community. Spend our money with the people that respect us and demand the respect.